think I just wanted to be loved unconditionally.
If you're able to get a mentor.
So investing in myself by way of being a lifelong learner.
Being high value is a lot of unnecessary things every day.
Staying in education and keeping my mind right is how I've overstepped poverty.
Not everyone's on your side. Not everyone's fighting your battles. You have to fight those battles.
Overstepping poverty.
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 Hello? I'm overstepping poverty right now.
Welcome back to Overstepping Poverty, the podcast that provides you with tips, tricks, and hacks in overstepping poverty. My name is Daquan Brooks, and I'm here with my co-host Zacchaeus Shaw. How you doing, Zacchaeus?
I'm doing good today, brother.
Good.
You know, out there coaching football today.
Yeah.
Myself. It can be frustrating sometimes, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah?
It is, but we got a game tomorrow. Playing Ben Rifle. Looking to get out there and just see some execution, man.
I love it.
That's where we're at with things, just the little things, but as long as they're getting better, you know what I'm saying?
Yep. It's a long season, you know,
it is a long
you
season.
got to take it one game, one practice at a time. So
it is. And the thing is, like, each year, because I work with the 7th graders, and it's a new group every year. So you have to learn so much about each different player every single year. Because growing up, when I played, I wasn't the type of player where you could like yell at me a lot and I'm going to respond.
Because it gets a little frustrating. Yeah,
Right. But there are players that will. So, you know, you really got to take the time to make a connection.
I completely understand that, just because like even like in my career field, you know, we have to coach as well when it comes to our salesmen and whatnot, because we want to make sure that the processes and everything like that goes smoothly. And each salesman responds differently to how you talk to them. You know, whether it's your tone or if you're more demanding than rather than just asking them to do something. So for every single person, you have to have a different way of coming about at the situation, you know.
Right.
So
the delivery.
Exactly. The delivery on that there. But you did ask how I'm doing. I'm doing great. I'm super excited to get into this episode here. We have a fellow Yote that's coming on.
Go Yotes.
Yep, let's go.
You know what I'm saying?
So why don't we get into that? Why don't you go and introduce our special guest?
Yes, I would love to introduce our guest today. It's fitting that I brought up football because we have the newest Sioux Falls Storm head coach with us today. I'm going to give a little background on this guy real quick. His name is Andre Fields. Before I bring him in, I just want everybody to know he almost needed to get more fingers for all of his rings. Which is crazy. But yeah, he's the new head coach for the Sioux Falls Storm, Andre Fields.
Let's go. Welcome.
On,
yes.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. So I want to ask you, as a coach, what was or is your favorite position to coach? Because for me, I've always been a lineman, but you know linemen got the best hands on the team.
Facts.
So I always wanted to coach the receivers or the corners. I love corners. I think they got the most swag. They have to have the most attitude. But what about you?
Well, me obviously having played corner, I would agree with that. I think we have the most swag, athleticism, most athletic guys on the field. So I really enjoy coaching DBs just because obviously I played the position myself, and that's really all I have coached. I coached Little League football as well, so you got to know everything. And as a DC, you make tips and, you know, point out things to other positions, but they also have their position coach. But if you ask me what's my favorite, of course, is secondary.
Of course.
Absolutely. If it were for me, I'd probably say like QB.
Okay.
You know, honestly, Sioux Falls junior football really took away my entire career field because I like to eat when I was younger. And so once you get into football, they have what's called a ringer. You get a nice little ring around your helmet. And if you're over a certain weight, you can't be a skill position. You have to be on the line.
Which is
and
crazy.
So, yeah, I know. Like, I had these tickets to you're selling like junior football, like tickets and whatnot. Raffles, yeah. And I was so excited to be able to get on and get into football that I sold all these raffle tickets in one night. Everyone was like, how did you do? Like literally, I spent all day and night. I was going door to door, just myself at this time. Sold them all, and I'm like, I'm gonna be a QB. I'm gonna get out there. Yup, let's go. And then I got in there, and they weighed me, and they're like, ringer. I'm like, oh shoot, let me get that money back.
That's crazy.
But no, that's a great question there. But I want to ask you a question where it starts from the beginning. You know, just telling us about you and just because not a lot of people, of course, around here. This is what we do to make sure that everyone knows everyone and they know the details of them. So I want you to tell us exactly that background story, where you came from, how you grew up, how'd you get here, you know?
Right. So I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois. I'm a South Sider. So I'm a White Sox fan, not a Cubs fan.
Okay.
But I'm a South excuse me. I'm a South Side Chicago kid. Went to high school there, grew up there. Family basically for the most part still lives there. Okay. And we'll get into those details, but got a football scholarship to the University of South Dakota.
Go Yotes.
So that's kind of what brought me to the area. But even in that, the defensive backs coach for USD at the time was a graduate of the same high school.
Okay.
And I have allergies, so if you hear my voice sounding like puberty, that's what it is. But he had graduated from the same high school, so he was obviously back recruiting that area, and recruited me to come to South Dakota. Through my recruiting, I wasn't recruited by a lot of big schools. It was more mid Division II schools.
Sure.
What it ended up coming down for me to was University of South Dakota, University of Nebraska, Omaha. This was back when they obviously had a football program. Yep. It was also back when they were still more of a commuter school, meaning they didn't have on-campus housing. Sure. So most of the students just lived at home and went to school there and took classes. The athletes, they obviously had ways of housing them. It was kind of like a JUCO where they had apartment buildings and things like that they housed the athletes in. So it came down to those two schools for me. And during the recruiting process, Coach Reed was his name. Rest in peace to Coach Reed. He passed away of a heart attack a couple years back. But it came down to those two schools. And Coach Reed was very diligent about showing me where each team was in their history. And at that particular time, UNO hadn't been playing very good football. And so he sent me like programs where he highlighted the standings and showed them at the bottom. And USD was kind of, in the middle. And he sent me articles about the program and this, that, and the other. And so for me, I ended up going to the University of South Dakota. And I committed to USD. You get on campus in August. Right. And so parents drive me out. We show up. It's the first day. We're getting checked into the dorms and all this. And they have a big team meeting to kind of kick it off. Right. We're sitting in the stands at the Dakota Dome, listening to the coaches. And I'm sitting there, with my parents and my father and stuff. And like, man, where's Coach Reed? I don't see him, This is obviously literally day one, right? We all just showed up. So at the end of the meeting, the head coach at the time, his name was Denny Crehan. He says, where's Andre Fields? So I raised my hand, so now I'm kind of like, whoa, I'm being singled out like on the first day.
That's crazy.
And I didn't really know him very well because Reed had done all the recruiting, so I knew of him. I met him on my recruiting trip, but didn't really know the head coach like that. But he says, hey, let me talk to you after this. So they break the meeting. We go down. He's like, come into the coach's office. We want to talk to you and your dad. So we go in the coach's office. And he's like, yeah, well, we just wanted to let you know that Coach Reed took another job, so he's no longer here. But, we still want you, care. But, you're here now. Like, they just basically making sure I didn't want to leave because he wasn't coaching, right? Yeah. And I'm like, okay, yeah, it's fine. I'm good. I chose the school, like he was a part of it, but I chose the school and just out of curiosity, like where'd he go? And they're like, oh, he took a job at University of Nebraska, Omaha.
What? Oh my gosh.
So from there, it became a mission of mine. I'm like, okay, let me see where they're at on the schedule. Oh, they're the last game of the season. I'm like, I have to play in that game. Right.
I
have to play in that game. And sure enough, I'm fortunate. I was able to start as a freshman. And so I started in that game, and after the game, I got to go up to him and he's like, oh, how you doing, man? I'm like, I'm good. And that's really all I said. And then I kind of went away because it was a combination of excitement from the game still, and then kind of just like, oh, I can't believe you left me, that type of thing. But fast forward, great story. I have a blended family.
Okay.
So I have 2 younger brothers, and then I have a brother and sister who are step siblings.
Okay.
Been with us forever, and I'll get into that a little bit too. But anyway, my step brother then obviously has a different last name. My dad married his mom. He has a different last name, but he's been with us since he was 8 years old. Right? We've been family since 8 years old. So now he's 18. It's been 10 years. I've been his big brother for 10 years.
Yeah.
He's 18. He's going through the recruiting process. I'm living here in South Dakota. He's back in Chicago. He comes down. They call him out of school, or out of his classroom. Come down, meet this coach, whatever. He comes into the room. Man steps up. How you doing, Lavelle? My name is Coach Reed. I'm with the University of Nebraska, Omaha. And Lavelle starts kind of giggling. He's like, well, what you giggling about? He's like, well, I know you. You just don't know me.
Right.
And he's like, well, how do you know me? He's like, oh, my brother's Andre Fields. Oh,
wow.
They go through this. Lavelle ends up committing to UNO. You commit and you sign in February.
Yep.
Right? That's for signing day for football. I get a call in May, June from Lavelle. Like, hey, what's up, man? What's going on? He's like, you're never going to believe this. I'm like, what? He's like, I just got a call from UNO. So I'm thinking the worst. I'm like, they reneged on your scholarship. Like,
Right.
what's going on? He's like, yeah, they called to tell me that Coach Reed took a job at University of Ohio or something like that.
Right.
And it's like,
Jeez.
I'm like, how ironic is it that he recruited both of us, gave us both scholarships to come and play at these schools, and never coached neither one
That
of
is
us.
nuts.
Like one day. Like he wasn't even on campus when we showed up. So
What is that?
crazy story.
Before we rewind into more of like how coming up and stuff, but with that, how did you feel? How did your brother feel about the fact that he did not? Well, for one, that he helped get you the opportunity of getting a scholarship,
right.
but not being there for you to see you fulfill it, I guess.
It was, it's 50-50. I mean, for us, it was kind of like, okay, well, just move on. Like, oh, well, we got to get to know all the coaches anyway type of thing. We kind of joke about, we tell this story all the time and we joke about it. And that brother, Lavelle, he's a college coach.
Okay.
So he had the chance to run into Reed on several occasions, and Reed kind of became a mentor to him.
Right.
So they talked about it and, he laughed about it. And it was a running joke in the family because I have a younger brother, and we always used to be like, well, there's one more. Like maybe he'll give him a scholarship and leave too, But yeah, it was interesting. Obviously, we're grateful that he gave us the opportunities, right?
Sure,
He's the one that recruited us, got us the scholarships. We committed to him. And it probably would have been really nice to play for him.
Right.
I mean, he was a successful coach, obviously. He moved around a lot. He was working at a D1 school, Eastern Michigan, when he had his heart attack,
they're pretty good
unfortunately.
usually.
But yeah, and so it was one of those things,
Yeah.
I never got to run into him again. Obviously, like I said, my brother did, but I never got to see him after those years, those college years. But it is what it is.
And now
It
look
is
at
what
you.
it is. Yep,
That's crazy.
exactly.
That's crazy. Can you take us back to when you were younger? You mentioned being in a blended family. What was it like growing up and becoming a blended family? Because there's a lot of people out there that obviously divorce rates are high. A lot of times families become blended families. And even my siblings, we don't have the same father. But for me, I never looked at them any differently.
Right.
So
Exactly.
what was it like for you growing up and kind of those changes?
Yeah, so and it'll also piggyback into more of who I am, but my story actually starts basically kind of when I was around 8 years old.
Okay.
So my parents had me, but they never actually married.
Okay.
Right, they were just co-parenting, and then at 8 years old, my mom. Great story for a podcast. Right? I'm full of them, but great story. My mom passed when I was 8 years old from cancer. The year prior, when I was 7, and of course I learned all of this later in life, right? But when I was 7, she knew it was terminal, and it was only a matter of time. And so, at least what I've been told, she wanted to finish her degree before she passed on. It's like something she just felt like she had to do.
Right.
So she was going to go back to school full time. It was nursing, so it wasn't like she had 3 or 4 years. She had like a year left. Because that's what she had went to school for originally. Didn't finish because of me.
Okay.
So she wanted to get that done. So she sent me to live with my great aunt and uncle because they had a family dynamic. They had daughters. She wanted me to kind of have that. and then the goal was then come back once she finished and ride it out.
Sure.
Well, at that particular time, my great uncle was a colonel in the Air Force. He was stationed in Rapid City.
Oh, wow.
So I spent 3rd grade in Rapid City, South Dakota.
Shut up. That's crazy.
Came back the very next summer because she had went to the coma. Come back, in September of that year, she passed. So that was like going into my 3rd grade, going into the start of 3rd grade. So she passed. Then I moved in with my dad full time, and he had a wife, and we had two boys, my brothers. Well, actually, just one of them, and then they ended up getting a divorce. And then he remarried, and then the other brother came along. They ended up getting divorced and kind of putting his business out there, but they ended up getting divorced. And then he eventually got with my current stepmother. Okay. So they've been together now for about 25 years.
Wow.
So I have 3 younger brothers and a sister. The sister's the one next to me. So it goes me, Lashana, then Jerron, Lavelle, who I mentioned, and then Danico is the baby. He's, I think, 29 now or something like that. So we're all within, no, I guess not, because he's 18 years younger than me, but we're all, clumped in there together. But all of them still live in Chicago except for Lavelle because he's a college football coach. Okay. So after he finished at UNO, he went to UNO for 2 seasons, then transferred to USF.
Oh, okay.
Won a couple national championships with Kalen DeBoer before he moved on, and then he got it right into coaching. Bounced around a little bit, but he spent the last 6 years at Mankato.
That's awesome.
So he's a DB coach at Mankato. So so he's moved around a little bit, but everybody else, they're still in Chicago. Yeah,
very nice.
So I got the scholarship to South Dakota. Came here, played 4 years. Met my wife in Vermilion, and she happens to be from Sioux Falls. So when I graduated, I actually lived a year in Sioux City and played indoor football for their
with
team.
The Bandits?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Very
so
cool.
that first year they were called the Attack, but they became the Bandits the very next year. Okay. Kind of like Sioux Falls, the first year of their existence, they were the Cobras, and then they became the Storm.
Right.
So that first year, I was with the Bandits in Sioux City, and then actually took a year off from football because that's when Shalia was born, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna just move on and get a job and be a grown up.
Yeah.
And then about 6, 7, 8 months in, I'm like, nah, I want to keep playing.
Right.
I'm seeing my friends still playing, guys that I played with or against, and I'm like, oh no, I got it. I got way more in the tank. I got to get it out. So then I joined the Storm in 2003. Wow. And played 7 seasons. And then moved right into coaching right after that. So 2009, was my last season playing. And then 2010, I started coaching.
Very nice.
So between 2010 and 2013, I've actually coached 10 seasons. Okay. So there were like 4 years in there where I tried to walk away, and either the coaches were pulling me back, like, man, come back and coach, or I'm at games and I'm like, no, I need to go back and coach because I got to help them out, that type of thing. So it's been so this past season was my 10th season coaching.
Wow. Congratulations on that. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
So what really got you into keeping coaching and continuing that career? I mean, obviously you had the love for football, you were playing it, but I truly believe that playing football and coaching football, those are 2 completely different levels. Like, and you have to have the love for either one of those to continue, especially for how long you have. So what has inspired you to just keep going?
Yeah, it's ironic because I think it's just an intrinsic talent or trait where I relate well with people. I think my special power, which is kind of what you're asking in a way, I think my special power is the ability to relate to different people of all backgrounds, races, likes, dislikes. It's just the way to kind of navigate that, right? Because what you were mentioning earlier, everybody responds differently to different things. Yeah. Right. And so I just feel that that's one of my things, is that I can kind of endure myself to people and build relationships with people of all types of, people you wouldn't think you could do that with. Right. I feel like I can find a way if they're open to it. And so because of that knack, I was just kind of drawn to coaching. Yep. Now, initially, the superficial reason was I just wasn't ready to be away from the game. I knew the playing part was over, but I still wanted to be around it. I still wanted to be with the guys, all of that kind of stuff. And so that's why I initially got into it. But as I kept going, it was like, I can do this. I'm pretty good at this. Like, guys, I can get through to them. I can motivate them. And so then that just kind of built from there.
I like it. Yeah. I like it.
I was going to say, so for you, being somebody that was successful really at every level that you've played and being very successful at USD, coming out with the Storm, winning as many championships as you did, I have to ask you, what did you learn? If you can reflect on that time, what is it that makes like a championship team, that mindset that goes into it? Because there's a feeling that you feel, and sometimes you can feel it on the first day of practice, like, okay, yeah, we got some guys,
right?
We got a chance, and if we can pull it together, we can make this work. What do you think goes into that?
You have to have a chip on. I believe you have to have a chip on your shoulder, or some kind of, some semblance of an underdog mentality to really truly like get the best out of you. Right. Especially when you've had some success. And it's ironic you would say, you've had some success on every level, because when I step back and look at it, yeah, I have, right? But while I'm in it, I always felt like I wasn't reaching the goal.
Yep.
And I think a lot of athletes go through that, especially when we didn't win a state championship in high school. I wasn't all state, but I knew guys who were, right? So for me, it was like, man, I got to get that. I got to keep grinding. I wasn't all state. I know I'm just as good as them. So you push it, right? Then you get to college, and it's the same thing. Like, well, I got to be an All-American. Well, I got to make the team better, And I'm at a small school. I got to prove myself somehow. With the Storm, honestly, in those years where we set this tone with all of those championships and all that winning we did, we talk about it all the time too. Like, we had a team full of small college players. We only had 2 Division I or Power 5 players on those teams.
Really?
With Terrence Bryant, our quarterback, being one of them.
Okay.
So everybody else was a D2, a D3 guy.
Right.
And we all, I think, played like that. Like, we never talked about it, but it was always, look at the roster from, like Lexington Horsemen were one of our big rivals at the time. It was Louisville, Kentucky, Georgetown, all of these big schools. And we're like, we got to go showcase. Like, they think they're just going to walk over us because ours say Augustana, South Dakota,
Right.
For
sure.
And so I think that drove us individually and collectively, because we're in this together. And the other thing was, we all had humility. We could push each other, and we knew it was for that same goal.
Right.
Like, I never felt that I couldn't go up to a teammate and say, and I've actually told this story, Mark Blackburn, another person you should probably have on the podcast, great dude, worked at Augie as a dean for 10 years, played with the Storm with me, another Coyote graduate.
Okay, let's go.
But anyway, I can remember, he was our guy. He was he ended up getting MVP of the 2008 championship game, but he was our guy. And in one of those championships, he was overheating, basically. He was hot, and he was just tired, and he couldn't cool off to really play, just overheating.
Right.
And because of that, he was a half step slow. He wasn't making plays. And I can remember just coming to the sideline and being like, look, man, I get it. You overheating, but you need to figure something out.
Right.
Because we need you, bro. Like, you playing
this
like
ain't
crap.
The time.
Yeah,
right.
You know what I mean? Like, I got to be the one to tell you, but like, you playing like crap, and you need to figure this out because we need you.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, man, forget you. You playing like, you get a lot of that sometimes.
Yeah.
But if you get those guys that are like, I got you. Yep,
right.
I feel you. Thanks. You woke me up. Like, I get it.
Right.
Like those, when you get that, you own to something.
Facts.
And we had that. We
awesome.
had that with that group.
That's
Absolutely.
really cool. I really like that. It makes me think of like Kobe when you talk about the underdog, because they talk about how he would always find a way to like make himself the underdog, even though they might be favored. He might be the best player in the world. It's, this dude thinks he can guard me. he thinks he's better than me then, type of thing.
That old Michael Jordan. Me being Chicago guy, I love Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Same thing. You're like, I took it personal. Like everything,
literally.
when it's fake.
That's what it got to be.
I like that. And actually, it's funny that you mentioned Kobe because I actually wrote down a quote that he had for us. And I wasn't even going to say the quote in this podcast here, but it actually kind of takes me into my next question for you. But Kobe once said, he said, I was chasing excellence and perfection, even though I knew I would never catch it. But just because of the fact that I was willing to chase it, I would defeat most of my opponents because they would never chase something they had never had guarantees attached to it. You know what I'm saying? And like, we're talking about exactly having that mindset and that hunger, that winning mentality to continue to want to get better, to be able to step up to the next level and to win, not only for yourself, but for your teammates and whatnot. Right. And I feel like in any level, in any career, if you don't have that hunger or that mentality, then you're just going to coast. And people who coast, they get forgotten. And this is why Kobe, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, those are people that'll never be forgotten because they were never comfortable with just being okay. They were chasing things like that excellence and that perfection. And there's only a percentage of people who actually have that in them and whatnot. But that was actually going to lead me to my next question for you here, just because, doing a little bit of reading, you had over 108 consecutive starts, which is a record, and we talk about how to be perfect, how to be as close to excellent as possible. And that's that consistency, and in your career and seeing and coaching so many different players, can you tell us exactly how important is it to be consistent at it in whatever you do in life?
I mean, if you want to be great, that's it. You have to be consistent. And I go around pregame and shake each player's hand and just, hey, good luck. Let's go have a good one today, or whatever I think I can say to kind of motivate them a little bit in just that little quick second. And for a lot of them, that's what I say. Like, consistency is greatness. Anybody can have one good game. Anybody can have one good season. But it's those who have multiple good games and multiple good seasons, those are the ones we call great. We only know them because of that. And like Michael Jordan averaged 30 points a game over his career. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
They played 82 games a season, regular season. He played in multiple postseasons where they go, you got to win 4 out of 7, right? And it finished with over 30 points a game. That's consistency, Anybody can have not knocking Kobe, obviously, but anybody can have the 81. But that might be one time and then just never 30 points a game, So that consistency is the key. And I think that, to your point, if you're chasing consistency in any goal, you're gonna that's a good thing to chase, because it's going to keep you grounded, keep you focused. You're going to realize that the days that it's really high, I'm going to have a low day at some point, and those are going to balance out. So let me keep striving to keep them high, that type of thing. So consistency is a huge piece.
Absolutely.
Huge piece.
Growing up, my dad always used to say, getting to work is usually the hardest part for people. It's just doing the act, and then once you get there, you're in the gym or you're waking up early and you're doing your thing, just get out of bed and go do the thing. Like you said, whether they're the highs or the lows, you showing up is more effort than majority of the people in the world. Literally, getting there is more than what most people are doing. So it's just that first step. For those that are chasing that perfection or consistency, just take that first step and keep working hard. I have to ask, now that you're in the position as a head coach, you work with players from all over the country, from different levels, whether it's D1 or JUCO or whatever. Can you talk about the challenge of working with the players that are at the D1 and the top, compared to those that do come in from a JUCO or NAIA or something like that, and kind of the struggles, or not struggles, but maybe challenges of working with those two different, I kind of want to say personalities?
Yeah, just dynamics. Right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, definitely. Because you're right. We get guys from all levels.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a lot of dynamics at play. For some guys, they, come from the Power 5 schools. We had the Oklahoma, Florida, You name it, they've probably been in the program. In
Right.
Arkansas, we've had a bunch of those guys. Then you'll have your local small colleges. You'll have your Augie or your USF guy, right?
Yeah.
You'll have the guys. I mean, we had 2 guys last year, Clifton Duck and Daryl Banfield, that were in Bears camp until the end.
That's
like
crazy.
We've all watched Hard Knocks. Like they made it to that last cut.
Wow.
And then got cut.
Right.
So we've had guys that come well. You deal with a couple different things. You don't always see it either. You have to kind of draw it out. So you deal with the guys who come from that and they kind of see this as a step down. And so they may not be really pushing themselves as they should.
Right.
You'll see the small college guy who really is pushing the heck out of himself. He's trying to overachieve because he has that underdog mentality. Right. And then you'll see the mid. You'll see, like, it could be a Power 5 guy, it could be a D2 guy where they're in between.
Yeah.
They're just kind of towing the line. The one thing that motivates all of them is something I say every year at the beginning. There's a reason you're here. All of you want to play at the higher level. We know that, right? That's why you signed up, because this is supposed to be a feeder league into like CFL, XFL, USFL, NFL.
Yep.
You all want that, but you're here. And that means that there's something about your game that's missing. Whether it's the guys who just got cut from the Bears, or it's the guys who never had that shot, or a lot of them have had a tryout or 2 or went to the combine and it just didn't work out. Like, there's something about your game that's missing. They don't think that you run routes good enough. They don't think you're a good teammate. They don't think that, you can tackle. You're just a corner that likes to go for picks. You know what I mean? Or you're not physical enough, or you're not big enough. There's something.
Right.
Right? And it's your job to find out what that is. If you know it, then you need to work on it. If you don't know it, you need to find it and figure it out and then work on it. Right. And a lot of that for some of them just comes down to really doing a introspection, like really checking themselves and being honest with themselves. A lot of young guys don't want to do that.
It's hard.
Either they don't want to or they don't know how to.
Right.
Because it just hasn't sunk in, right? And so I try to drive that point home, like, you're here for a reason. My job is to either continue to push you to see it, and then we can exploit it and we can highlight it, or whatever we got to do to bring it out there so you can get better at it, or it's to point it out because maybe you didn't know it, because the one thing we do know is that everybody at this level is athletic.
Right. Yeah.
Everybody at this level is good. Like, so it's some kind of intangible that we got to figure that out.
Right.
And a lot of guys, it's guys who get that. And then of course there's guys that don't.
Right. Yeah. That's just kind of how it is.
Or they get it too late. Right. Some of them, they'll figure it out and they've been in the IFL for 5-6 years. And now the league is like, oh, you finally figured it out and you turned it on, but you're going to be 30.
Right.
We're not taking you at 30 because I can go find you at 25 somewhere else.
Right. That's crazy.
I mean? So,
yeah.
With that being said, I mean, we also discuss failure on this podcast here. And to me, in my opinion, success is like the devil to me, just because when people get so successful at something, a lot of them just become, again, comfortable. And so whatever they're doing, and then you have someone else who hasn't tasted that success or had that moment, and they're continuously working, and they soon pass these people who've had a little bit of success and have just kind of leveled out. Now, what I want to know exactly is for you, obviously we talk about all your success and everything that you've done, but a lot of the times no one ever talks about those failures on that.
Right.
What are some failures that you've had that you've really just overcame, and like how have you taken that next step to overcome those failures and build off of it?
And that's a really good question, because there are a lot of them out there, but the ones that really kind of change who you are as a person, I give you one that's just right off the top that is obviously relevant. And I also tell this to a lot of the guys that come in with the Storm. So for those listening who just kind of don't know the structure of indoor football, we carry 25 players on our team. Okay. We can only dress 21 of them each week. So essentially we have 4 guys that are practice squad. And it's not necessarily practice squad because each week that could change and fluctuate who's on the 21 man.
Sure.
But there's always going to be 4 guys that don't get to participate in the game each week. And that can be rough, right? Because for a lot of them, they've been starters their whole life. And now all of a sudden they don't get to play.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and they don't understand that in some cases it's not just, oh, you weren't good enough, but sometimes it's, oh, this left tackle has a sore ankle. We got to dress another lineman just in case. Or if we got to dress another lineman, you got to sit. Right. So it's not, you know, oh, because you had a bad week. So anyway, with that said, it can be tough on the ego.
Right.
Because you also then don't get your full check. Right. The 4 guys that don't dress don't get the full check. The full check only comes if you're on the 21-man roster.
Okay.
Right. So you don't get to dress, you don't get to play, you got to stand on the sideline, and you're not getting full pay. You getting paid pennies, you know.
So usually they're probably hot about that.
So hot.
Right.
Well, I played that first year in Sioux City, fresh out of college. I was a starter that whole season. We played against the Storm, and at that time we played them like 3 times in that season, beat them all 3 times, right? So then when I came to Sioux Falls my first year in 2003, I knew a bunch of the guys. Like, we either played in college together or I played against them when I was playing in Sioux City, so on and so forth. The first 7 games of that season, I was that guy that didn't get to dress.
Really?
And so it really hurt my ego. I'm like, man, I was a starter against you.
Right.
Like, I dominated some of you wide receivers. How come I'm not dressing? You know, and it was tough. And those first probably 4 or 5 games, well, once it got to 4 or 5 games, I was like, it's no sense in me doing this. I'm wasting my time. I'm practicing. And I'm not getting to play. So I'm not getting no money. I'm just out here. Like, I'm not gonna keep doing this, right? My ego is really being loud, right? And it was my buddies, Bobby Perkins to be exact. He was like, man, just stick with it. It's going to come. Just stick with it. It's going to come. And he and I played at USD together, and so he was close. Yeah. He's older than me, so he was always kind of a mentor figure. Oh, just stick it out, man. I promise you it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Yeah. And that was the only reason why I stuck it out, because I didn't want to let them down. But every week it was excruciating. Then you stand on the sideline like, dude, like, we halfway through the season. It's a 14-game regular season. Here we are on game 6. I still haven't dressed for 1 ball game. Right?
Did you feel like at the time that you were better than those that were in front of you?
Yes. Yeah. And obviously that, I should feel like that, right? But I did feel like that because the guy who was in front of me at the time was fresh out of college. I had indoor experience, and there is a transition period.
Sure.
Like, it's a different game. It's like football, but indoor football is different. And so there were little things that I felt like I was way better than him at.
Right.
Now, was he good? Of course he was, right? I'm not going to sit here and say that. Like, I wouldn't down him or nothing, but I felt like I was better. I think I was way more physical.
Sure.
So anyway, game 7, finally get a chance to dress. Right? I'm like, okay, I get a chance to dress. Here we go. I remember I made every tackle on special teams because in my mind it was like I gotta make plays. Or it's not, or I gotta prove it, right? So it was like I'm making these tackles, like no doubt. Game 8, didn't dress.
Oh wow!
Right, so I'm like, what in the world, right? I know I was killing it. Well, the stars kind of aligned because the guy in front of me had an absolute horrible game. And Coach Riggs called me from the bus because it was the road trip. I remember he called me from the bus and said, be ready next week. It's your time. Right? So I'm like, cool. Well, from that game on, I did 108 straight. Like the next 6 years, didn't miss no games. Part of that was that experience. It was like, I'm not going to Wally Pip this, where I'm not going to get hurt. Like if I was banged up, I made sure to figure it out, take some extra ibuprofen or something. Sure. I'm playing. And so that really drove me to, I got to play well because I don't want them to replace me.
Right.
I can't be hurt because I don't want them to replace me. Like I wanted it more, So that really was one of those times where the failure of not being able to dress, that humility that I had to stand there on the sidelines and just take it, drove me the whole way.
Yeah.
Now, there's plenty of guys that have a similar experience with the Storm.
Yeah.
And we got to remind our new guys of that every year because they get to pouting and, oh, Coach, come on. And I'm like, look, it happens to everybody. It happened to me. Like, I understand.
Right.
And it doesn't make it easier on you. I get it. But I do understand. But that was one of the things. Here's the other one. And this one is a life one for me. When I was in high school, I had the benefit of being on the track team with one of the fastest sprinters in the state of Illinois. His name was Ray Fouché. He was the same grade as me. He ended up taking third, like 3 out of the 4 years in the 100 meters. And he used to always blame that on the fact that he had to go 100, 200, 4x1, 4x2. Like, well, I was tired. My legs are. It's because he never actually won state. But he was one of the fastest guys in the state the entire time we were in high school. Like, he was the man. If you Googled him, he going to come up. Well, being on his team, I have a room full of high school relay medals. They all say first place. Because as long as you gave him the stick,
right,
you didn't even have to be close. Just get it to him clean. He was going to win.
Take off.
So, long story short, we cocky because we don't lose. We got Ray. That type of thing. And we're standing in the tent or wherever they put us, the holding area before you go out. We're standing in there next to Bloom High School, which was another team that was very, very good. Like, it was competition. And I can remember they make you stand in your order, right? And so the guy from Bloom looks over and sees he has to race Ray. And he said, damn, Ray, I got to race you? Man, I want to race him. I've never forgot it. I'm 46 years old. Wow. I never forgot that moment because I was like, there's 2 other dudes on this relay. He pointed me out.
Right.
He did.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm like, I get it. You don't want to race Ray. Don't nobody want to race Ray. But he pointed me out on these 2 other dudes. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm faster than my two other homies.
Right.
So I can't believe he just called me out like that. Man, it drove me like, it still drives me. Like, if I think about it, I'm like, you can probably hear it right now. I'm like, I can't believe he just called me out like that. And so, that really, really drove me home. And then the third failure was we, in one of those track meets, we had already set a record for one of the relays, and we were going to set a record for the other one, and we dropped the baton. And I didn't know it at the time, but the next day, Chicago Sun-Times, it's only 2 papers, the Tribune and the Sun-Times.
Right.
They have I get the whole sports page.
Oh, no.
I'm squatting down like this.
Oh.
And it's like Thornridge's Andre Fields, in disgust after dropping the baton or something in a relay race.
Right.
And it wasn't, the only reason why it bothered me is because it's like, they put the failure on the back page.
Yeah.
Why they got to put that picture on there?
Right.
So, they just drove me crazy.
They weren't there for you when you was holding up the first
right.
match.
You know what I mean? Exactly.
That is life, though, right?
It is.
Like, a lot of times people do want to see you doing good, but never better than them, especially when you get in competition, right? And whether it's sales or it's coaching or sports in general, you got to be your own biggest cheerleader because there's a lot of people that want you to fail, and like the Chicago Tribune, they'll broadcast that, the ugly moments, right? So,
but like you said, they drive you, right?
They
Never forget it, and it drives me, and I get upset sometimes when my players don't have that same kind of drive or when I don't notice it. Because to your point, like, if you just keep an underdog mentality, it's going to keep you consistent because you always constantly feeling like you got to chase. Keep chasing. And I know when we were winning championships, we were the hunted, but of course that also drove us. It's like, we can't make it seem like we was a 1-year wonder. Got to win it again, Can't let them think that they're even that close. Got to win it again. Like, we had that mentality, that was a special era in time that all of us who are part of it, and even fans who are part of it, it'll be special to them. Yeah. But we had those mentalities. We were like, we're going to play this Colorado team that's won 2 games. If we don't win by 21, something's wrong.
We suck.
Yeah.
Right.
So we were just hungry. Like, everybody had that mentality.
You got to be hungry.
I love that.
You do.
So one thing I want to get in before we get into our roundtable where you're able to ask us some questions, I want to bring family into it now because as a coach, you know, and working, I'm not sure, were you working while you were coaching? Yeah.
So just up until last June when I basically became full-time with the Storm.
Yeah.
I had a job and all the assistants work outside of coaching.
Okay.
So obviously that takes a lot of time away from family, right? And I experience that now as well as I coach and all that stuff. How, for you and your family, how has going through football and the lessons you taught through football, if you can kind of wrap that all up and think about how you bring that into the home, right? And bring in that consistency and the discipline and accountability, all those things. How is that translated from football basically into family life and life in general?
It's a good question. I've been blessed that my family has been supportive of the whole movement, when I was playing, because that can be hard, especially like these guys don't make a lot of money. It's $250 a game.
Right.
And that's nothing. You know what I mean? And it's taxed, right? So it's really less than that, right? Yeah. So it's really for love of that dream, and you got to have family behind you to allow you to do that. And I was fortunate with that. My family almost pushed me into it sometimes, like those times when I tried to step away. My daughter and my son were like, why?
Right.
And part of it was they were a little bit kind of selfish because they like the access and to kind of walk around like, my dad's a Storm guy. Kind of thing. So they would always try to push me back, and I had one of those wives. My wife was always like, you need to go do that. You're starting to drive me crazy. Like you need to get out and go coach somebody, get it out, that type of thing. So I've always had the support of my family behind it. But I've also always known that I had to balance it. And so for me, another reason that drove me when I was playing was like, I got to play for the Storm or I don't play. Because I wasn't in that position where some of the guys now, they come from, like you said, all over the country for this dream. And I always describe it to people. I'm like, this is like a nice summer job. We take care of the housing, we take care of the food, and they get a check. So if they didn't want to do anything while they're here, they don't have to. They can be all football. Right. And I encourage that for some of them that really want to go on to the next level, because it's like, if this is what you really want to do, you actually have a 4-month window where you can dial in. Like maybe you didn't dial in fully and that's why you're playing here. Like now take advantage of the training and of this and the focus and like go all out. Yeah. Some of them we encourage, man, you need to work. Like I know you got bills and expenses and baby and this, that, and like find a part-time job and just make it flexible around what we do.
Right.
Well, for me, that's how it was. It was like, I have to make it work here. Because if the Storm would have cut me, I wasn't going to go play for somebody else.
Right.
It was like, I got bills and responsibility. I can't do that.
Well,
so that was one of the things that drove me. Like, you got to make it happen here. They got to keep you, that type of thing. So definitely family is a huge part. One thing that I know that I'm going to try to do as a head coach that we kind of got away from, and it's to nobody's fault. Like years change, things change, sponsors change, venues change, etc. But one of the things we used to do when I was playing was we used to have families come around on Friday before home games. We would do our team meal, and we would encourage, like, if you have kids, bring them. And all the trainers would bring their kids, and the coaches would bring their kids, and the players who had kids would bring their kids, and the kids would run around on the field, like Shay and Damaris running around on the field. Those are the moments they didn't want to give up, right? But it drew us in, and that's why you'll hear so many people that were around our era when I was a player that look at it like family and call it family. And Peyton Riggs, our offensive coordinator, who's Coach Riggs' son, I mean, he says it all the time, like, this was my family. Like when I was 7 years old, every year I had 30 new big brothers, And so it's like, that's all he knows, Shalia is kind of that way. That's all she knows. Yeah. And Shalia being my daughter, that's all she knows is Storm football. Like she was literally 3 when I started.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
she's a part of the team.
Yeah, she's a cheerleader now. She just finished her 3rd season cheering. So it's a huge part of it. It is with anything in life, man. If you got family support, it's going to be a lot better than if you don't.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
100%.
So we try to make sure that we keep that as a part of it.
For sure. Has to be.
Yes. You know, actually, I have 2 questions quick here. They're all going to go into the same here just before we get into our next part of our episode. One, you have a very busy schedule, you know, and we kind of took a chance to reach out to you and have you on the episode here on the podcast. My first question is one, why did you decide to come onto the podcast today?
Well, first of all, you asked, right? And nobody else had asked. I'm like, yeah, sure, of course. I'll do a podcast. The first one as the new head coach. So we got that feather in our cap.
There we go.
Yep.
2, I've known Zacchaeus for a while. So, but it was always fringe, you know, like we maybe see each other now and then or whatever. And so when he asked, I'm like, well, absolutely, I'll do that for you, you know, support the cause. And then when I saw that you were on there, like, full disclosure, you know, I'm not. We keep it real, you know. I'm like,
absolutely.
I'm definitely going on the Black Guys podcast, like give them some love and show it up. And then I think you guys are doing a good thing. The message and the intent behind the meaning of overstepping poverty and like the description of them. Like, I gotta be a part of that because I'm on that movement too. So.
Absolutely. And that was actually my second question. There is, you know, we ask everyone that comes on here because we all have a different mindset, different mentalities, different understanding of what overstepping poverty is. Can you tell us when I say overstepping poverty to you, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, so I thought about this earlier. I kind of knew that it was going to go in this direction. For me, it's about the mindset because I think poverty is a mindset, right? Some people see it as just a state of being. I'm poor, so I'm impoverished, you know, how I grew up. Well, we know people who are very happy in that, at that level, right? And there's levels to it, right? Because there's people who may be here that think they're in poverty when there's other people lower than them. So for me, it's a mindset. And I think overstepping the mindset is something that we have to do as people, right? But especially as young Black people, because we can get caught up in it.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we can get caught up in it. And for me, if we can show young Black men that you can be cultural but still be striving for excellence and doing the right things and being being somebody who can change and all of that, to me that's what we got to push more of, because what I think happens with a lot of us is we come from the hood, right? We know we want to be out of it, right? But when we get to a point where we can be out of it, we feel this need to like still be connected to it because we don't want the people in the hood to disconnect us or look at us some kind of way.
Right.
And a lot of times they do it just because they're not on the same trajectory as us. Right. And so they kind of throw that out there and then you feel some kind of way. So you want to feel like you got to stay connected to it. We all know the goal is to keep moving up, keep getting better, right?
Yes.
There's no shame in that. You got to let that go and show them like, no, it's not that. Just let me show you how to come with me, and instead of you standing there hating on me and that type of thing. And great analogy. I used this with the football team a couple years back. I think it's very relevant to this scenario. A caterpillar goes through a metamorphosis to become a butterfly. Once it becomes a butterfly, it can't go back to being a caterpillar.
Right.
Once you made that change, man, you did something, you got out the hood or you did this or that, the other, you can't go back to that.
Right.
Right. And there's no nobility in you trying as a butterfly to go and hang with the caterpillar on the ground. The nobility is go down there and explain to that caterpillar, man, you got to go through the metamorphosis so you can fly like me.
Right. Yep.
Hope.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Go tell them that rather than just hanging out down there on the ground when you can fly around in the sky. Like, go tell them how they can get that to that too, so they can go through that metamorphosis and start flying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's our job as, leaders, coaches, in anything that we do. We have to show how to be successful and give people these steps to overcome anything in life. So like you said, show how a caterpillar can become a butterfly and continue to fly and be a butterfly. then go back, So, but that does lead me into our next segment of our episode here, which is our roundtable.
Yeah.
This is where you can actually ask us questions. Nice. I know you came prepared, so fire away. Let's go.
So the first question, I'm sure you probably get this one, but so why the title Overstepping Poverty? Like, how did that come about?
So Overstepping Poverty came about because one, when you first see it, no one ever like recognizes the overstepping. They look at poverty and they instantly think, oh wow, this is like something down in the dirt. You know what I'm saying? Getting it out the mud, which I totally get it. And that's what I wanted to people, because it's a topic that people feel a lot of people don't know about unless they came from that. But there was more to it than just that. Like you said, there's the mindset of it. And that's in anything in life, whether it's, if you want to be successful and you continue to tell yourself negative things, well, guess what? That's a poverty mindset right there. You know what I'm saying? Yep. But it's so broad. And I know that every single person that we have on here, they have a different perspective of what poverty is and what it means to them. And so I wanted to make sure that we had something on, whether the title is something catching, so that when people do think of this, they can actually make it their own when it comes to that. Like, how can I overstep poverty, or how can I help someone else overstep poverty? So that's why I kind of just like dove into the title, and I'm like, this is it. Because when I was younger, if you listen back to our first episode, there were some things that I was going through, and I made it my mission that someday I would give back. And this is how I'm giving back. I want people on here to tell others how they became successful. So then people who are listening to this, they know that you're not alone. You know what I'm saying? Like there's another way to get to be successful in life. You just got to listen, and you got to take some of these good things that we're all saying and we're all preaching about, and then implement those in your everyday life. And that's how you're going to overstep poverty.
Yeah. I hated the name. At first he said it, we're like coming up with names. We're sitting right here at this table and going through names. I go home. It was late, probably after midnight. And he texts me, he's like, Overstepping Poverty. I'm like, hell no.
Like, nah.
No, I don't like the name. I don't want poverty attached to our name is really why I didn't, because I felt like he said, when I thought of poverty, I didn't want people thinking of the stereotypical idea when people think of poverty, of a black man in the hood. Like, I didn't want that. And as we were talking about, he's like, this is nowhere on the internet. Overstepping Poverty is untouched. And that definitely opened my eyes to it. But then as we started to talk and go through the different topics that we wanted to talk about, it's something I became passionate about, because again, I can echo what you guys saying. Everybody, we've seen people come from the worst to the worst and be more successful maybe than anybody we know. And we know people maybe firsthand, maybe we went to school with them or whatever, that come from quote unquote perfect lives and are unable to meet up to expectations or unable to meet up to what society thinks they should be. And yeah, I think that with Overstepping Poverty, and a reason why I like having a bunch of different guests on, is it kind of reminds me of the book Think and Grow Rich. If you read the book, the guy that basically formulated the book of Think and Grow Rich, what he did was he interviewed the most successful people throughout the world, and that was his job. And through interviewing them, he was able to find what is the characteristics that each one of these people share, because we all have so much more in common than we think. And that's what it is for me. Like, when I talk with you, there's something that I can take from what you're saying. There's something that people are going to be able to take from this. It doesn't have to be the full thing. It could be one thing where it's like, oh, damn, like I am being slept on. I got to keep going. And just everybody that we have, they just have so many different perspectives, whether they're from America or they're not from America, those different perspectives, or being from here. There's a lot, but I really enjoy the learning of everybody that we have on. And I think Overstepping Poverty is about that. So
we're in a good flow right now, because that leads me to my next question, which is, through all of these interviews that you've had so far, I think it's 30 interviews or something like that.
Pretty much, yep.
Has there been, or what has been the biggest thing or theme that you've learned from all of these interviews?
I'd probably say the biggest thing that I've learned from each of these interviews is, and I keep saying it, it's just the different perspectives when it comes out there, but also every single person that we have on, they don't close your idea out. They don't close like what you're saying out and just is like, okay, yeah, no, that's not it. You know what I'm saying? Every single person has such an accepting mindset. And it takes me back to college where I had a USD teacher, Mr. Roach, shout out to him, for criminal justice. And he sat in the front of the class and he had a lantern and he put this lantern down and he's like, what do you guys see on this side of the lantern? And everyone said what they saw. And he's like, okay, well, if I told you on the other side, it wasn't this. It was something just completely opposite of what a lantern is, you know? And we're all like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, that's the thing. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not true, you know? And that's a message that I've taken with me in my entire life. Mm-hmm. Like, it's better to maybe ask more questions and learn more before you just jump to a conclusion on anything and just shut it out. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I see on like everyone that's successful and that sits in that chair and we ask and we interview them. They're successful because they're learning. And everything that they do in every stage in life, it doesn't just stop. So they continue to accept these things in so they can get better and they can help other people get better as well.
So, you know, it's interesting before you get to yours as a kid. Shout out to USD teachers, right? They must have been doing something right. Mm-hmm. I had a similar experience with and I don't remember his name. Mm-hmm. I'm older than Daquan. So I don't remember his name, but I remember the class was it was the most interesting class I had because this is how it went. We came in the first day and he basically said, I'm going to ask this question. Mm-hmm. You're going to like basically research your answer and sell your answer to the question. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to discuss it the whole rest of the semester. Wow. Like what? You know what I mean? Uh-huh. And then it was basically, you know, then at the end, the final was kind of like, have your opinion changed or do you still stick with what you originally said? And the point of emphasis or that the end point at the end of it was something that stuck out to me, like the lantern thing. Yeah. It was correlation is not causation. And his thing was, if there's 10 people that go into a movie theater and watch a violent film and 9 come out and commit a violent act and 1 doesn't, then that means technically, according to what he's saying, and there's some truth to it, but we could argue, but there's some truth to it. He's basically saying if 1 doesn't, then that movie was not the cause of those people doing violent acts, right? Because it wasn't 100%. And then that's what we worked through that whole semester. It was deep. Makes right? You think like, it does. Yeah, it was like, okay, correlation is not cause. You may be able to make a correlation, but that doesn't mean that's the cause unless it's 100%, you know. And so very interesting that you had a similar experience.
Yeah, shout out to USD.
Seriously.
For me, the biggest thing I learn and take away, I think, from each person is a few things. Most people that we've had on have failed. A lot have failed, and for most of them, their relationships were always the most important thing as to why they got to where they're at. You know, for you, it was the coach that recruited you and your brother that got you here to South Dakota, right? And from there, it doesn't even matter that he didn't coach you, right? Because everything else is unraveled to where we're at today. And for like Matt Roach, we had a Matt Roach on, and his step into where he's at now was working for somebody and changing to working with them as owners of the same company. And from that point, building what he has now. And it's like that for a lot of people. It's all about the relationship and the people that we meet in this journey. And like Daquan said, the perspective and relationships are some of the most valuable things that we can have, because with perspective creates understanding. And once we understand something or some situation, we're able to have sympathy or empathy or know how to respond and react to certain things, as opposed to just being like, oh, damn, they're crazy or whatever, you know. So perspective, and then just the relationships, the whole network is your net worth thing is real, I think. Yep. So
agreed.
That's the biggest takeaway from most people on here.
So I got 2 more.
Sure. Yeah.
One more thoughtful than the last one. But so the more thoughtful one is, when I'm coaching, and obviously the goal next year will be to win the championship.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and then once we do that, then we'll move on and go for the next one, right? But that moment will be kind of the goal of the season.
Sure.
So what's your guys' goal? What's that one thing that you'll be like, yo, we did that, or yo, we made it? Even though I know then the next day you'll move on to something else. But what's the one thing right now that you're shooting for with the podcast?
Yeah. I think right now for me, there's so many different things.
Right.
Because I really do have a big vision for Overstepping Poverty. I've said it before I even believed it, but I really do think Overstepping Poverty is an international brand. I think it's something that can connect people all over the world. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it will take getting to that point to feel that we've been successful. I think the biggest thing for me is, I think when we're going out of state to go somewhere and sit down and interview somebody, is we're like, okay, we're actually taking it. Like, we're hopping on a flight or whatever it is to go somewhere and continue to build this thing. Because right now, pretty much everybody has been here in Sioux Falls. We've gone to a few different businesses now and been able to record at those places. But just getting out and growing and expanding to different parts of the country, and then hopefully the world at some point will be amazing.
Right. It's funny you said that, because right when you said that, it gave me butterflies, because I was thinking the exact same thing. I'm like, gosh, I want to get on the plane. I want to show up to someone's office with all of our equipment, sit in there and have a full understanding of them. You know what I'm saying? And be able to take all of our viewers and listeners with us, just to know that though this is community knit here, we also want to step outside the community, because we're going to be able to change other people's lives elsewhere as well, when it comes to that as well. So that's, I'm sorry, I gotta take the same thing.
Right.
That's all good, man. I think it's awesome for us to want to do those types of things and want to grow, but at the same time, going back to the relationship thing, last time we recorded with the mayor, and now we're recording with you. Nice. And being able to build a relationship, build a friendship, or, so if we see each other, we see each other at Hy-Vee, it's not going to be like, we know each other, but we don't really talk. No, it's like, what up? Like, it's good to see you. And it connects people, man. I wish more people would sit down and just have a conversation this. We didn't even get into anything like super, super deep or super personal, or just, but we're able to know more about each other, knowing where you're coming from, kind of how it was growing up, and those are important, because then you can add more of the human feeling to the people that you're talking to. So exactly. It's crazy though. It's crazy being able to sit down with people like yourself, honestly. Absolutely.
So my last question then is, when was the last time you guys been to a Storm game?
Ooh,
that's a great question.
I can go first. It's been about 3 years for me. I used to go with the students that I worked with, so whether it was Summit Oaks, we would go to some games, or community campus, just in the school district, and out to some games. But it's been too long. That's for sure.
Mine has been high school. Honestly,
really,
I can say that honestly.
Well, we know what we got to do. We know what we got to do in March, April.
Right, March. Seriously,
let's go.
This sounds like we might get an invite.
There you go.
We should. Well, actually, one of my questions was, how can Sioux Falls do a better job of supporting you and the Sioux Falls Storm?
Coming to the games. To me, that's the biggest thing right now. Is I think we literally, in my opinion, spoiled the city with our successes. From 11 to 17, we were in the championship every year. And I think so people got to be like, oh, they're going to win it again. Oh, they're going to win it again. But then in 17, obviously the league changed. We got a few more teams in it that were competitive. Like 17 was the year that Arizona was their first year in the league, and they came into our place and beat us in the championship.
Oh, wow.
Then in 18, we lost to the championship at Iowa. So we've been in the game for so long. I think everybody was like, "Oh yeah, whatever.
Right.
Storm's gonna win." So they stopped coming.
Right.
But now we want to get them to come back. We took a couple years where we didn't make, we first round and out, or we didn't make the playoffs, and then this past year we got back to the championship game. So Biggest thing the community can do is come out and support us. You know, the tickets aren't expensive, and I think that's always a big deal.
Sure.
They're $12. That's
Wow.
$12.
Yeah.
And technically it's $10, but then there's a $2 like fee. So it's $12.
$12. Yeah.
So the community can come out and support us in games. You know, we can get the Denny packed back up like it used to be. That'd be the goal. And you know, it's not gonna feel the same. We get a lot of the old people like, well, in the arena only held 3,500. So you put 3,500 in there. It's packed, it's loud, it's exciting. You know, you put 3,500 in Denny, it still seems a little empty. But it's actually, for us, it doesn't. Because the bottom bowl is only like 5,000 total seats. So if you get 3,500 in there, it looks packed.
Right.
So that, you know, that's what we want. Come out, support the team.
Yeah.
I think we will get, you know, the goal, obviously, or hopefully, is that we'll get a few more people who've been away for a while that'll want to come back now just because I'm the new head coach. I mean, and you know, it's not against anything, but it's changed. You know, Curtis has been the only head coach we've known.
Right.
Technically, he's the second head coach in Storm history because the first one, it was only a year.
Right.
So everybody just knows Curtis Riggs as the head coach, and now that he's finally moving on, it's a new era, a new feel.
Right.
I always say it's the same house. You know, we built a strong foundation, but we also built a very strong house. You know, and all we're doing right now is really just changing the paint.
Redecorating.
You know, changing the paint, changing the pictures. But we're gonna try to keep the house the exact same. So we hope everybody comes out and supports us.
Absolutely. Making some room for more trophies.
There you go.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
I feel it.
Well, let's do that, Sioux Falls. Let's definitely get out to the games. They start in March.
Yes.
So definitely be on the lookout for that and get the family out there.
Exactly.
Just get the family out there. It's not expensive. Go be around some football, some energy, and ultimately help our team here in Sioux Falls.
Yes.
Correct. That's correct.
Support.
Absolutely.
Now, our very last thing here is something we ask everyone to do. We want them to come prepared with some tips, tricks, and hacks in overstepping poverty. So I want to know exactly what you would tell someone, those tips, tricks, and hacks on how to overstep poverty.
Gotcha. So feel free to chime in with any feedback or any thoughts on them. I think the first thing, and we talked about it, is, you know, you don't think poverty. Right? Think abundance. Think gratitude.
Yeah.
Right. It's easy to compare yourself to, well, we get, like they say, comparison is the thief of all joy, right? So a lot of times we're looking at somebody doing better than us and we're like, man, and I get that. But I say change the mindset around that.
Yeah.
Right? Don't look at it and feel bad about where you're at. Look at it and be like, okay, I got to get going. Like, use that as motivation. At the same token, don't pacify yourself by looking at somebody who's doing worse than you, because a lot of times we can do that too.
Right.
Kind of like playing down to your talent.
I'm not where I'm at, but hey, at least I'm better than such and such. No, don't do that.
Right.
Keep looking at the person who's doing better and strive for that. Rather than, because if you compare yourself to somebody who's doing better, then you're just being complacent. You're not going to push yourself.
Yeah. Bob Proctor says your thoughts turn into your reality.
Yep.
Exactly.
So you got to make sure your thoughts are in the right place, or you'll be in a place you don't necessarily want to be.
There it
right?
is. There it is. The second one I would say is, plan your work and work your plan. And the plan's going to change, right? But I can specifically remember when I was 8 years old, I came across an episode on NBC, one of the networks. It was like Inside the NBA, but it was whatever the first version of that was.
Okay.
Right. And they basically they went to some NBA player, and I can't remember which one at the time, but they were like at his house. It was behind the scenes.
Yep.
Right.
And this was before they used to do that, because this was in the, late 80s, early 90s, more like late 80s. And I remember they went in big house, nice cars and all this, professional athlete. And this was the year that I had just started playing Little League football.
Okay.
I can specifically remember saying, that's what I want. I want to live like that. I want to be that. And I also specifically remember being like, okay, how do you get to that? And then I walked it backwards. Well, you can't be a pro unless you go to college, because that's where they draft you. You can't go to college unless you're good in high school, So I got to be good in high school.
Right.
Like, it was like, that was the plan. Got to be good in high school because that's how I get to college. And if I get to college, then that's how I can get to the pros.
Right.
And I think if more people were to actually set a plan like that, and that was basic, but if you set something like that and then follow it, sky's the limit.
Right.
Because you can get more detailed, right? When I got to college, it was, okay, this is a D2 school, so I need to start all 4 years. Otherwise, they might not think I'm good enough to go to the next level.
Right.
I was fortunate enough to do that, but it was because it was a motivating factor. Like, I got to do this in order to get that shot,
It started with your desire.
Correct.
Right? Like, you have to be able to, if you're at home right now and you're thinking and you're coming up with a plan, you're right. Like, what is it that you want? Once you know what you desire, you got to make the plan.
Yep.
And then if you keep that there, that desire stays there, you're going to chase it until you get it.
Yep.
And that's a beautiful thing.
The next one I say would be detailed with your dreams. This was one that I learned later in life because I've always said God has given me everything that I've asked for. But he didn't give it to me the way it was in my mind. Right. And I think that's on me because I wasn't detailed. When I was little, I used to pray to be a professional football player. I was.
Yeah.
Right. I played with the Storm. That's pro.
Yeah.
You sign a contract, you get paid. I was a professional football player.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a professional NFL player.
Yeah.
But I didn't say NFL. I said pro football, and God gave me that.
Right.
You know what I mean? And there's a lot of things in my life that have been that way. Where I asked, and I look back on it, I'm like, man, I got that.
Right.
But I didn't get it the way I thought about it because I wasn't detailed enough. So I tell my son and them, be detailed about it. Like, don't say you want to be a pro basketball player. Say you want to play in the NBA. Because they'll send you to Turkey and give you some money.
Man, power of the tongue. For sure.
Definitely be detailed with your goals. We talked about this, so I won't hit on it too long. But be open to what you don't know. Because I got a lot of friends in Chicago that just wouldn't be able to make it in Verm.
Right.
And you've been in Verm, they wouldn't be able to go into those bars and enjoy themselves. Right. And I enjoyed them. Like, there was times where I started looking forward to going. I'm back home in the summer in Chicago. Like, man, I got to get back to Vermilion. I want to hear some Cotton Eye Joe. Yeah. Right. Something crazy. It's just
some Shania Twain.
It's just you got to be open to what you don't know because you need to be expansive.
Exactly.
Right.
If you close minded, that's what you are. And so. I also talk about how, and he probably won't hear this unless we tag it to him, and I might tag it to him just because. But he's still my brother-in-law, although my sister-in-law's ex.
Okay.
Right, so technically not, but my sister-in-law's ex, my brother-in-law. If you ran into him on the street, you would think redneck, racist. You know what I mean? He's red hair, buff dude, wears the cutoff shirt, some tats. Jean cut-off shirt, cut-off sleeves, jean jacket, redneck looking dude. Like, when I first saw him, I was thinking if we were in Alabama, I'd just mind my business. You know what I mean? That's how he looks. Completely not that dude. Completely not that dude. I love the dude. You know what I mean? Like, that's my man. He loves me. It's all good. We good friends. Like I said, he divorced, but we still friends.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know that if you didn't open yourself up to that. There's so many of us that would see that and have that attitude, like, oh, he probably a racist, and just keep it moving.
Right.
The only way you really gonna know is, hey, how you doing? Or introduce yourself, or be open to seeing first. They gonna show you. They'll show you their colors. Like,
real quick.
If they are, they gonna show you, and then you'll know.
Yeah.
But if you don't know, don't assume. And there's so many of us that do that, man.
For sure.
Definitely in the opposite. I mean, we got 100 million examples of them just assuming, the white lady who clutches her purse just because you walking down the street and you black, like that. Like, don't do that. Like, we got to be open to what we don't know.
Facts. Yep. It's the only way we grow.
Yep. The last one for me is, it's a quote, and I think, I don't know if you didn't say it, but you were close to it. But when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I think if more of us could sometimes just stop and look at it from a different perspective, doesn't mean that you have to accept it, but it might just give you a different perspective. Here's where I got that from. And you talked about Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
And it wasn't in that book, but I think something in that, it might have been.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I heard this. Oh no, it was Stephen Covey.
Okay.
Told this story, and me being from Chicago, it's fitting.
Mm-hmm.
Right. He told a story about it's 5:00 on a city train. Like, just imagine your Chicago L train, right? It's 5:00. Everybody's coming home from work, so the train is half crowded, right? Man sitting there, and he says, train stops. A father and 3 kids get on, and the kids are about like 3, 5, and 6 years old, so that young age.
Mm-hmm.
He said they all get on, and the kids are just rambunctious. They climbing on the seats, they running around the train, and they doing all of they loud, they fighting with each other, and the father's just sitting there like dazed, just kind of in la la land, not really there. Right. And Stephen Covey, who's telling the story, he's like, you can notice the people on the train are starting to get annoyed with these kids. Mm-hmm. And he's took it upon himself. He's like, let me go over here and just talk to this man, see if he can corral him up before somebody goes off and it gets bad. Right. So he goes and sits next to the guy. And he's like, excuse me, sir, I don't know if you, I'm not trying to be in your business or anything, but, kids are kind of unruly right now. You might want to make them sit down and relax because people are starting to get annoyed. Mm-hmm. And he says when he said it, the man kind of like snapped out of his daydream and kind of looked around and was like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry about that. They probably are a little unruly. I just came from the hospital. My wife died. I don't really know how to handle it, and I guess they kind of just don't know how to handle it either. Right. And he said that at that moment, he had what he called a paradigm shift, where he saw the situation from a totally different perspective. Like nothing changed but the way he saw it. Because now he felt empathy or sympathy for the father and the kids, and he kind of understood why they were doing that. Right. And so it's so many of us, if we can, before we react, maybe just take a second to maybe see it from a different perspective, and we might be in a better place in the world with our relations, For
sure. Thank you for sharing that. That's powerful. That's very powerful.
Well, thank you guys. Well, thank you for being on the podcast today. You definitely have shared a lot of wisdom, a lot of intelligence, a lot of ways to go about different things, whether it's your perspective or how you should oversee a situation. And I think a lot of our viewers and listeners are going to respect that, and they're going to really relate that. And the next time they see, the man on the bus and he's kind of sitting there and the kids are running around, they're going to have a different, they're going to come at it in a different way. So we definitely appreciate you being on the podcast here.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Man.
Thank you guys, man. I enjoyed it. And I'll come back again too.
Absolutely.
I love it. I love it.
Do it. After the ship.
Right. Let's go.
There you go.
A little recap.
See you next August.
I love it. Well, thank you to our viewers and listeners. Do not forget to go to oversteppingpoverty.com, get your merch. Also, don't forget to like, share, and follow this. You guys know right below we have all of our social medias, so we're just looking for that follow and the next person to be on our podcast. But we'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Overstepping Poverty. We hope you found this week's discussion informative and thought-provoking. We know that tackling poverty is a complex issue, but by working together and understanding the root causes, we can make progress towards creating a more equitable society. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and family, and don't forget to subscribe to our show. Until next time, let's take the next steps in Overstepping Poverty.